Hello and welcome to another episode of Hearts Wide Open. Today I have another lovely guest with me, Jelmer, to have another beautiful episode with you. And before we get into the episode, I want to briefly talk about how I met Jelmer. He, I think, saw one of our stickers that Dennis printed in Rotterdam, if I'm not mistaken.
No, it's a friend of mine saw it.
Okay.
A friend of mine saw it, I think in Amsterdam, and sent me a picture. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. A friend of yours saw it and sent you a picture. And Jelmer also does some amazing and great work about men's health that is called Man Up Club, that we're going to talk about it at the end of this episode. And basically that's how we got in contact. And since then, I personally feel a great connection to you and also what you do. I'm super happy to have you on the podcast. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Happy to be here.
Yeah. So to hit things off, I have a question. And maybe before starting the conversation, you might have noticed that the setup is actually different. It's because now we're recording at my place because Dennis is gone for a while. So that's why everything might look a little bit different. And I hope you don't mind. This is the first time we are recording this here. So if everything is not perfect, excuse us. We're going to try to also make this setup better as we go every time. Or we also might record in different places. So thank you for already keeping that in mind. And also give us feedback how everything is for you. I wanted to ask you, how would you like to be introduced?
Oh, that's such an interesting question. How would I like to be introduced? But what I really like to be known for, what I aspire to be, is a person that likes to learn and teach. That's really what gets me excited, what I like doing. And that's a very broad thing, like learning and teaching.
Oh, that's beautiful. Jelmer,
I hope so.
Someone who loves to learn and teach, correct?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay, amazing. So you also briefly talked about how people usually introduce you with your work. And you briefly talked about public speaking. And today in this episode, we're going to talk about public speaking, because Jelmer is one of the experts that teaches a lot of people, as you said, thousands of people how to do public speaking. So maybe briefly you could tell what is it that you actually do and how did you actually get into it?
What I do right now is I help people become better at public speaking. And there are two types of people there. One type are the people who are very afraid of it. I'm really good by now. I dare to say I'm bad at many things in life, but this is something I've gotten really good at, is helping people deal with that fear and overcome it. The second group is the people who aren't that afraid of it anymore, or maybe never were, those few outliers, but who still see like, wow, if I can go from a 7 to an 8 or a 9 in my public speaking skills, that is gonna have a massive improvement in life, really. Yeah. Work and personally. Yeah.
Interesting. And how did you get into public speaking? Did you always want to be a public speaker? Because I assume that's not a very common job to have, in my opinion. Maybe it is. But I'm curious how you personally got into it.
I feel like I've been pushed more into it than I actually chose it. Mainly because in different stages in life, people told me, hey, you're good at this. You should do something with it. And then we're talking public speaking. And I never really envisioned that I could do something with it. Or one clear example is I used to do this internship. And like a student job at a big consultancy firm. And I think my supervisor, my manager there, noticed that I'm not good at many things as well, like I did as well. But he repeatedly told me, hey, in this presenting thing, you're good at this. You should do something with it. And I always remember thinking like, I know by now. I know I'm decent at it. But I never then what? How am I gonna do that? And I remember thinking, but I'm such a young guy. Yeah. Who am I to do this? And I also never felt the aspiration to be like a Tony Robbins or a very famous person on stage per se. I just love learning and teaching, and I was always obsessed or interested in communication and what makes public speakers interesting, but not necessarily. That's what people often think, like, oh, you're into public speaking, so you want to be that next Oprah or that next Robin Williams or whatever. But for me, public speaking is the teacher in front of the class, right? It's the coach who says something in the football team. It's the captain of the team. It's the person at the family dinner making a speech. For me, that's way more public speaking than someone in front of an audience of 10,000 people, because then it's, of course, it's also public speaking, but then it's more a show, and it's very exceptional. Only a few people do that. Whereas the examples I just named, we all have that in our daily lives. And I've always been obsessed, like, oh, why is this person boring? Why I've met also in this consultancy firm and other places that I worked, I've met such brilliant people, very good at their job. But then someone else would get the promotion first because they knew how to talk to people. They knew how to present their findings, or they knew how to communicate, even though others were way better at what they were supposed to be doing. And I've always been obsessed. Like, why does one kid get away with the same BS, in school? Why does the teacher like this kid and not the other one? And I think a lot of that has to do with public speaking, the way you present yourself, the way you connect to your audience. And to me, that is more public speaking that I think of and work on than Simon Sinek talking to 50,000 people. Yeah.
So it's more of the daily. Would you define then public speaking as the ability to say what you wanted to say, no matter how big is the population? More than one, maybe.
Well, it could also be one. For me, that's already a form of public speaking. For me, public speaking is like the part you mentioned. Mm-hmm. What do you want to say? But also, what do they want to hear? Mm-hmm. And I think that connection is where it often goes wrong. And that's something I've become quite good at because of my intense childhood. Because those people that I spoke about, who are really smart, really good at their jobs, sometimes they do know what they want to say. They're just not being understood. They're not being heard. People cannot follow them because they don't know how to adapt to what other people want to hear, or how not only what they want, but also what are they capable of. What is their language? What is their way of understanding the world, or what is important to them? And I think public speaking is bridging that gap. Because you will find very good public speakers, people who are very trained at it. They can talk about almost anything and you will like it.
True.
Right? Yeah. Because they know how to adapt to how you like to receive it.
Yeah. What would you like to lessen? I think I was also talking about this with someone regarding storytelling. And we were discussing that everyone has a story to tell, but not everyone knows how to tell the story. And then we were talking about the example of technically some people could tell a story out of nothing, out of thin air, about a strawberry, but say it in a way that how so much pleasant to hear, how the strawberry was grown in a farm that was wet from the rain, with the smell coming out of it, and a little old farmer was taking this to a shopping, like a local shop, to sell this. And it is actually, yeah, you're right. Maybe it's a really good skill to how to adapt the same story even to different audience.
Yes, because if you're talking about a strawberry, it really depends on the kind of person you have in front of you. Because if and this feels very cliche, the things I'm going to say feel like an open door, but people are not aware of it and they don't have the tools to adapt. But if you talk about a strawberry in front of a group of kids, it's going to be very different than a group of elderly people. But also if they're the same age, say they're all around 30, an investment banker, especially when they're in the role of that, right, in the job, compared to a nurse or someone in the military or data analyst, they won't all like the same message, the same delivery. They won't all like it equally because they are looking for different things. They value different things.
That's true. And were you always a good public speaker?
No. I firmly believe it's a skill. How I got there is a lot of trial and error, a quite chaotic youth. But to answer your question, how did I start with this? Is after hearing people occasionally tell me like, "Hey, you're good at this. You got a talent." There's been two very critical moments. One of them was during my master's degree. I studied business sustainability in Rotterdam at the university, and we were kind of the showpiece of the business school. Like, oh, the best sustainability degree in I think Europe or the world. And we got a whole extra course on personal development, and 50% of that was public speaking. And the professors who taught that, a man and a lady, and especially this lady, her name is Dorothy Grandia. She was so good. And I remember sitting in
public speaking.
Yeah, she taught us public speaking. And I remember sitting in the lecture hall, and she was explaining things to us. Very tangible things that you could do that always work. And I remember sitting there, and I think for the first time in my life, I felt like, I can do this. I can do what she's doing. Not yet, but I felt in my gut like I could do this. You know, I can see myself do this. Like a kid who sees a football player and in their gut feels, I could do this. If I work hard, if I learn, I could be that person. And that's what I felt like. Then I pushed it aside for a few years because, I doubted myself, and I listened to my parents and society, like, hey, you got to start at the bottom, work your way up. You're just a young kid. What?
Step by step.
Exactly, step by step, that kind of stuff. And I did, and I went into corporates, and one of the few things I, again, heard that I was good at talking and connecting to people, public speaking. And then I crashed. I crashed quite hard in one of my jobs, my corporate job. I was living in a place with my ex-girlfriend where we were not happy. I had to quit this job because I was just burning out, because I would wake up with panic attacks. I would wake up with a big dread to go do this job because I was mostly sitting alone in the office or with one other person without social interaction. And looking back, that is like, now that I know myself so much better, like, this is the worst. I thrive on connecting to people. Somewhere where I didn't like to live, I didn't have a job, I didn't have much savings. And then the big question came all the time, what am I going to do with my life? Right? What the F am I going to do? And I did a lot of therapy. I did a lot of journaling, and at one point, it started coming back to me. What could I do? I also felt kind of useless. And I felt like all the paths that were laid down for me by society and the way I grew up, school, blah, 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 university, master's degree, start working at a corporate. It just didn't work. I had no clue, what am I going to do? And then it started coming back to me, and I just saw myself do it, standing in front of a group, learning and teaching. And then I thought, should I then go into education? I thought maybe, but I also love to work maybe within corporates, help those people who I've seen who are so much smarter than I am, teach them what I know about people or what I've learned, and I keep on learning, help them get better at it so they can actually make an impact as well. And I could just see myself do it. It was one of the few times in my life where I kind of had I wouldn't say a vision, but it did feel like a bit of an epiphany, like
aha moment.
Yeah, like not really like aha moment, because I already knew, but it was just so hard to ignore because I just felt like I can do this. I know I can. And then obviously the doubt came immediately. But at one point I was so low, I just thought, you know what, I've got no mortgage, I've got no kids. I basically have very little to lose in that regard. And I just thought, you know what, F it. I'm gonna start. And I started doing a lot more courses. I started training people for free to try out things. I got a few gigs that slowly started paying. I took a side job to pay the rent. And after 8 months or so, I could quit my side job because I started making enough money. And slowly my confidence also started growing, like, hey, I can actually do this. Because I just started testing. We moved to another place and I just put a posters on the wall in the building saying, hey, free public speaking class. Come show up. And I would just test everything I've been learning. And then some of those people said, hey, at my company, we could use this. And that's how it slowly started rolling. And looking back up at it, I'm like, why did I have to go so low in order to say, you know what, F it? But it's also a bit of a hero's journey by now.
Yeah.
And it's not like it's only like been like that, of course. It's
true, but I think sometimes we really have to go that low. And this is I think this is something with human psychology that it's unfortunate, but we have to be taken to the extreme to realize where we are and do we have anything to lose, and get the courage to really go for what we want or what is really important for us. And this is what you said regarding a hero's journey. At some point, you have to die once or twice or 3 times to really say, okay, wait a minute, stop. Now I really don't have anything to lose. Maybe I should really think about what is important for me and go after that. And don't care about the parents' view, and don't care about the mortgage, or don't care about all these things that is holding you back, and really going for what you want. But I think that's also, for a lot of people, how they start therapy. Like, people don't start therapy until something extreme happens, like the death of a parent, or the loss of a love that really affect them, or they lose their best friend, or someone commits suicide, and they're like, wow. Like, they get shaken, and they're like, oh, wow. I actually now have to start therapy.
Yeah, that's so true. It's a bit of an aha moment. I also see this with friends, and I think even more so with men.
Yeah.
Male friends, it's, oh, but it's not that bad. It's often the response, right?
True.
Oh, I don't need it because it's not that bad. Talking about therapy. Like, stuff has to go really low before they seek it out, and then sometimes it is also too late, maybe, for some. or it's a huge gamble, because when you're super low, you have to be lucky that you bump into the right therapist, that you get immediately the right medication for you, and other factors, because your resilience is a lot less. So I've seen this with friends also who have died due to suicide, but also others. Like, it's when you wait until your resilience is so low, or when you're so deep into something, it's harder to adapt, because when the therapist then disappoints, the disappointment feels like 10 times worse than when you are in a better place in your life, where you say, hey, I'm just going to try out this therapist. Oh, it doesn't feel like a click. I'll go to another one.
How would you recommend people to develop empathy?
The way your caretakers, often parents, treat other people. Like each other, but also other people in life. How do they treat their neighbors? How do they treat the waiters in the restaurant? Stuff at work. I think that is such an underestimate, because kids notice most things, right? And that forms our map of the world and how to deal with empathy. So one of the things that I definitely have had to learn, and still have to learn, working on it, is I never or barely ever saw my mother show empathy, especially not to people outside of her circle. So it's not just the direct exposure, it's also the indirect.
Mm-hmm.
And themselves.
What do you mean themselves? Empathy toward themselves?
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Do you have an example?
For my parents, or for...
Yeah, if you can.
I think that whole generation, and especially the generations before, were raised with, and I'm talking more Western, with very little self-compassion, right? It's a survival mechanism almost that is ingrained, I think, in society, to be hard on yourself and push through. And if you never see your parents being able to show emotion or be vulnerable in a way with each other, or it's the complete opposite, where they're overly vulnerable and you have to take care of them as a kid, right? Then you get into parentification. And in that case, I also never really learned how to be kind to myself.
Yeah.
Which I also see a lot with public speaking, actually. Like, a lot of the people who struggle with it, or just who want to become better at it, they can be so harsh on themselves. Often way harsher than actually people in the audience are. So this is also what I love doing in group sessions. Often I tell clients, your biggest judge are you yourself. You're judging yourself way more than they are. But also, you don't have a lawyer, it seems. I often say this to people, like, where's your lawyer?
What does that mean?
Where's that part of you that says, you know what? When your teacher made fun of you as a kid, when you just entered a new classroom in school, you were just a little kid, and then you peed your pants, and everyone laughed. In front of the class, you were just standing there. And since then, you never want to be in front of the classroom anymore. Where's the lawyer who says, hey, judge, she was just a kid, and the teacher should have been better. So please don't judge her that hard on what happened or how she dealt with it. And interestingly, like in group sessions, especially if you work, what I like to do with a no asshole policy. So I try to select also people who, or at least deselect the people out who I feel like they won't be a good contribution to a group session. You will see that there's a lot of lawyers for each other as well. that there's a lot of empathy within the group, and they start cheering for each other and helping each other out with constructive feedback. And they'll be like, no, you didn't do bad at all, or you could have improved this, but this was so good. Keep on doing that. And then the person who receives that feedback is like, oh, I could never be that nice to myself. And I think when she starts nurturing that in something vulnerable like public speaking, it becomes a lot less pressureful, right? When you can say, oh, I come from far. I never learned this in school. I only had bad experiences. So maybe it's okay that I take more practice, more sessions or to learn this.
For me, it's an instance that I start cheering for myself is when at running.
When you're running?
Yeah. At some point when it gets very difficult to breathe, I literally start telling myself motivational speeches.
How do those speeches go? Can you recall it? What is the theme?
I think.
Do you hear like Eye of the Tiger?
Not Eye of the Tiger. No, I literally tell myself that I got this, or sometimes you got this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I constantly say you got this. Don't stop now, and just a little bit more to go, and. Yeah, I don't know where it came from. Maybe it came from the fact that for a lot of my life I learned to motivate myself rather than people coming to me say, oh, good job, blah, blah, blah. That's why also I'm not a very external person. Like I would work hard to sleep good at night because I know I did a good job, rather than if I knew I didn't do my full potential and my CEO comes to me and says, oh, Soroosh, you did a fantastic job, I wouldn't take it, which is maybe not great because it also goes back to I'm my biggest critic. What's the difference?
Between what other people think of you and what you think of you. Where's the line?
Well, I think there's a fundamental difference on what other people think about you. I look at it as more in a way that how you project yourself in the world. And if you care more about that, you can put up a persona that, oh, now I can put up this shield of plastic or whatever, not even plastic, it's not see-through, because I care what Jelmer think about me, what Dennis think about me, what Jessica, blah, blah. But when I come home, that shield is gone. And at the end, for me, end of the night is like when the shields are gone, what do you think about you? Are you happy with the person that you are? And there you cannot put any shields. Because nobody knows you the way you know you. And that's what I truly care about.
What is the difference between confidence and arrogance? One thing I've always been obsessed about is when people told me, oh, you seem confident, and I didn't feel like it. Or the other way around, right? Like, oh, you seemed uncomfortable, whereas I actually felt quite comfortable. I've also been told, especially when I was younger, that I came across as arrogant sometimes. And people quite often ask me, because I brand myself on confidence, that I help people find confidence.
Yeah.
And they, obviously, one of the things that they go to is like, but won't people see me as arrogant then? So I spend a lot of time thinking about this. So I'm really curious about your answer on it. For me, where I am right now, the thin line is defined by connection and care. A confident person will connect to others and care about others or the situation. And caring is not the same as dependency, right? I can care about you and your feelings and your opinions, but I don't have to depend on them. I think to me that is true confidence. that I can hold space for you, and I'm generally curious, right? It's another C, curious, care, connecting. But I'm not dependent on your opinion. Whereas arrogance is often a shield almost of insecurity. It can also be the opposite of confident, because you have to block others out. You're not connecting to people and you're not caring, right? That's arrogance. It's like the snob. I don't give a damn. I don't give a fuck what y'all think. So for me, the line there is, as long as you can show other people that you do want to connect, again, not rely on them, but connect to them, and that you care, and that you're curious to a certain extent, from a safe place, like from a comfortable place, that often people love that. In most circumstances, people will reciprocate. Can you name an example of an arrogant public speaker that is successful? Trump,
or on top of my head, I would say it's Elon Musk.
Here's the thing. The audiences that they speak to, both Trump and Elon Musk, still feel like they care about them. So Trump's audience definitely feels like Trump cares about them and that he wants to connect to them. That he's even curious in their troubles. If you're not in his target audience, he comes across as very arrogant. But ask the average Trump supporter and they won't say he's necessarily arrogant. No, he's confident. Have you ever heard of virtue signaling?
Virtue signaling? No.
Virtue signaling.
What is it?
Virtue signaling is a way of making other people feel that you and I are the same, that we're on the same boat. So virtue signaling is a form of building credibility as well. Credibility of the persona. So in public speaking, we call this ethos, which is the credibility of the messenger, right? Not the credibility of the message itself. That's more logic, logos, but the messenger. Okay, if I start talking to you about Bitcoin now, we're on this podcast, and I say, by the way, Soroosh, this coin is la la la. You won't really listen to me. You won't even listen so much to my logic, because at first you're like, who are you to tell me about Bitcoin? Right? Who is the messenger? Virtue signaling is a way of also building credibility, because I'm showing, hey, you and I are on the same page and I've got decent values. Even if they're not necessarily your values, I might still build credibility there. Yeah? Credibility is quite easily earned. Not fully, trust, but on a subject, by just naming some experiences. Or naming a few values. Now, what you need to know is, credibility is not judged by the sum of everything you do or say, but rather by the average of a few standouts. So I can name all the companies that I've delivered workshops at. Or I could just say Unilever, KPMG, and Google. It's enough. I don't have to list ING, Rabobank, la 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 la. You get the point.
Yeah.
Right? And how to build credibility.
Yeah, for someone who is listening at home and they want to build credibility, what are some good tips to take?
Name experiences. Not too many, just a few standouts. Build upon others' credibility. Right? If I say I've dated a famous person, instantly people will see me as more credible in the dating market, which is, if I say I've been on 10 podcasts already, you are more likely to accept me as a guest. Expertise. Yeah, I've been studying this for years. And values, right? That values signaling, virtue signaling. Virtue is a value earlier. Like,
yeah, you said.
I really care about men's health. I've lost 2 friends. And this is true, this is not bullshitting, but I know it helps because people will feel, oh, this person also cares about what I care about. Thus, I trust this person a little bit more.
How did your past or your not adulthood, your youth helped you to be the person that you are now?
My youth has... Well, let me first tell you some facts. I've lived in 11 different houses before I moved out of to go study, right? Before I just turned 19 when I moved out. 11 different houses by then. 4 different primary schools and 2 different high schools. So it was turbulent. It was often chaotic. And how it has really formed me is the changing environment, right? New school all the time, new neighborhood, new partners of my parents. I had to adapt all the time. And this really forced me to learn how to talk to people. Because I was quite a shy kid at times. And I kind of got to experiment all the time. Okay, new classroom this year, new neighborhood. If I position myself like this, how would the kids respond? I failed miserably. At times, I felt very alone. I felt very misunderstood. So, as a kid, I learned to be very aware. If I position myself like this to these cool people, or to the nerds, or to those or that, how can I get them to like me? I think often people ask me, like, where did you learn public speaking? And they want to hear credentials, you know. And I've done theater. I've done a lot of courses. Yeah, I learned a lot there. But what I also learned is in this youth, like to become a chameleon. I could blend in. I was often the bridge between the groups that had fights or that weren't nice because I could make friends to everyone. And at the same time, I had no clue who I was myself. That has really formed me, like I said earlier, or what we're going to further talk about is, who are you and what message do you want to spread versus what do they want to hear, right? What do they need? It's just that I was forced to learn these skills because otherwise I would be lonely, and I felt lonely as fuck often, you know. It's all people who have experienced this will know how it feels. If you go to a different school, the groups are already set, right? The kids know each other for years and you're the new kid, and then they put you in front of the class. Hey, Jelmer, introduce yourself. And what are you going to say? Hey, hi. Right? You feel so judged. You feel so alone. But at a certain point, the 6th school I went to, within a few days I had friends. Because I just learned how to make other people feel good about themselves, impress them, be seen as a nice guy. And you know what also happened in this? In all these schools, I did see the same pattern with public speaking. That so many kids were so afraid of it because they were just thrown in front of the class. And then when I got to the last school, the last few years, people would say, oh, you're really good at this. But they didn't see me years ago, you know, when I was struggling so much.
How does this make you feel now, looking back at it? Looking back at your child version of you going to a new school. What is the feeling that comes up?
A lot of compassion. Pride. Like, I'm proud of how I did it. I a lot of sadness. I see what it had cost me because these are the benefits. I use this in my work now. But like I said, the downside, I became a chameleon, but inside it was kind of empty. Because I didn't know, but who am I then, right? So I feel that compassion, and also the older I get, the more I learn about what kids need. I'm not even a parent myself, but just seeing other kids and learning and reading. Damn, the last thing a kid needs is uncertainty all the time. And loneliness and like emotional loneliness. Being in a big classroom but feeling all by yourself, right? Being on a big playground, but sitting there alone, being ignored. That is, I feel a lot of empathy and but also pride. Like, how did I pull through? That is, my therapist taught me this. We've done many many sessions trying to visualize like kleine Jelmer, little Jelmer. I like by now I can do it. At first it just sounded like woozy boozy or far away, but now I can do it. Just envision like giving myself a hug. You know, like, hey, I'm so proud of you. I know how you feel, and it's shit. It's not your fault. It's not.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I could tell that kid as well that it was okay, that he didn't have to act to be someone else per se in order to be liked. That there's different ways as well. But
yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Must feel difficult also, I can imagine, to be a kid and trying to always merge and always deal with the instability. And also, I think it's easy now that we talk about it. I don't think it's easy, but like easier to come up with solutions. But there are also other ways, but I think as a kid you don't know. Like, you really don't know. And I believe what kleine Jelmer did was literally the best thing he knew and that he can do.
Yeah.
And you should be proud of him. Look where you are now. And I have also experienced this need of this emotional loneliness. I think you experienced it as a kid maybe more. But also I think a lot of immigrants also experience this. When at the adult age, all of a sudden you move alone to a completely different country, different culture. All of a sudden I felt like, whoa, I don't know anyone here. And their language is not my language. We probably don't have that much culture in common.
You're being judged?
Yeah, my country is being judged on the politics also.
Yeah. And your skin color?
Yeah.
The way
now, trying to find myself through this world was very difficult. And I know a lot of friends that they also just came. And they have also a lot of this kind of struggle. They don't know how to meet people. It's super difficult for them to start a conversation. They don't have the confidence. And they feel lost and emotionally alone, that they don't know what to do. That's what pushed me to maybe also, because also I had the exact same talk that you had. I was like, I have to go to either talk to someone or I'm gonna be fucking alone in this country. Literally. I was an introvert in Iran and I didn't like to talk to people, and for a phase, like, I used to go to all sorts of social events to just talk to people. Like, more, for me, exposure therapy is the best kind of therapy. And I would go there and I would just be shy. Sometimes someone just came and talked to me and we had a chat, but slowly, I think like after 1-2 years, I gathered the courage to, if I see someone on a corner, I go to them and say, hey.
Yeah, I can see you do that. I mean, I don't know you differently than this. Yeah. So I'm quite surprised because I came in here and you started talking so naturally.
Yeah.
Also the first time we met. Like,
what are some tools that you would give to people to become more confident or better at public speaking, that also audience at home, if you guys are listening, you can also take these tips with you.
So, very generally speaking, there are different philosophies or methodologies within public speaking training. You will find a lot of coaches that are very big on authenticity. That has its merit, And I think it's overvalued. Again, the comparison, the analogy with swimming. If you tell a kid, you push them in the water and they don't know how to swim, or even an adult who's never learned it, doesn't know how to swim, you push them in the water and say, just be yourself, be authentic, or you give them other vague advice. Don't move too much, but don't move too little either. That's not helping, because that person is getting a stress response, which is exactly what happens when you do public speaking, a stress response. And a stress response makes you want to fight, flight, or freeze. The third one is not enough people know about freezing. That's often the blackout, right? You lose your track of mind. What I'm really big on, the way I've been trained and inspired, and how I help people, is learning what works. And when you learn what works, how do you swim? How do you stay afloat? How can you be efficient? How can you actually start enjoying it? The authenticity will come. And then we can say, okay, right? And it goes hand in hand often for me. But authenticity alone is not enough, because a lot of people don't feel access to that, right? Tell an introvert people, just go to a group and just be yourself. Well, they feel, if I'll be myself, I go away from the group, right? But if you tell them, hey, if you talk to a group of people and you have body language like this, right? If you were to Google now, and people at home can do this, public speaker, body language presentation, Google images, what you're going to see is most people are standing like this with their hands open. We call this invisible basketballs. As if you're holding two basketballs or a big ball. You will see 70% of the pictures, people like this, standing like this. Otherwise, they would be like this, like Angela Merkel, but it's always with their hands in front of them. And their body language, how is it? It's open. It's connecting to people. I train people to stand like this as a base position. You always go back to this when you're on stage. To you, it's going to feel very awkward when you're the one doing it. To the people in the audience, they will love it. First of all, they won't notice it unless they are professionally trained. They will see, I see what you're doing. The other people won't notice it because they'll just feel like, oh, this person is confident. They're connecting to us. These things, they just work. And I've learned they work in every culture. Of course, there's always nuances. But almost any human being on earth appreciates it when you connect in a comfortable, open way to them. Why does this work as well? What do you think? Why, if I stand like this?
Just open, I think.
Exactly. So all your vital organs are exposed. I'm even showing you my hands, my palms, my wrists. I've got nothing to hide for you. I'm talking to you. I'm connecting. The same goes talking to people. Don't make it about you, make it about them. Ask them about them, and there are certain tools and techniques that always work. One of them is mirroring. You just repeat the last word they said in a questioning way. So you could say, I used to be an introvert. I could say, you used to be an introvert? And you continue talking. Right? Another one is labeling. Whoa, it seems like you had to put work into that. Like, it seems like you consciously pushed yourself out of the comfort zone. You're like, yeah. Can you tell me more about that? I'm showing interest. That always works. But these are tools you can learn with people. And I think genuine interest or genuinely trying to connect is not manipulation. That's like, it's human flourishing for me. Now, what I would really advise people, especially if you're afraid of it, go do safe exposure. It's a stress response. You're not going to learn by overwhelming yourself. You're going to learn by finding a place, just like with therapy, where you have a comfort zone, where you feel safe with your trainer or group, and then you can step out of the comfort zone, but also go back in.
Yeah.
And out and in, out, in, out, in, out in, and you'll see that the comfort zone grows. And that's going to help you in the real life. Because a lot of people just wait, or they go to this class where there's like an inspirational, you can just do it. Or just be yourself, just be kind and be yourself. And then the next time they're on stage and there's CEOs and there's investors, it doesn't help because it's so far out of the comfort zone. You're not trained for doing that, right? You can't learn how to swim by jumping into an ocean that is chaotic. That's not how we start. You have to build it up. I think the number one tip there is save exposure practice with someone who knows what they're doing. Then you are golden. You can
to a lot of places.
There's plenty of places to do that. Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, I think that's very important indeed. As you said, I think the ability to present ourselves in the world is such a big thing. Like it's personal branding, or even if it's not professional, just being able to, I don't know, talk to your girlfriend about a topic that can come up. I think even people could use those kind of helps in this kind of situation.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Fantastic. Yeah, so this was an amazing episode. I'm very happy to have you here. For the people that are listening, if they want to find you and they also want to actually get some coaching with public speaking, where can they find you?
My website is presentthing.nl, or connect to me on LinkedIn, Jelmer Smits. I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn nowadays. So.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you so much, Jelmer.
You're welcome. Very welcome.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I will also add the website and Instagram and all the socials in the link at the bottom of the episode. Thank you so much again, as always, for listening. Hope you enjoyed this episode. If you liked it, give us 5-star. Give us a good review on Spotify, YouTube. We also have the videos if you want to watch our faces. Also, you can go there. This episode will probably come up end of November, so this will also be the end of our Movember campaign. So if you could still help us reach our goal with Movember, or anyhow that you could help us to raise awareness about men's health, please also do. That means a lot for us. And yeah, this has been it. Another episode of Hearts Wide Open, and we will see you next time. Good on, man.